Barbara Barkley was last seen on May 29, 1981, at her job at the pipe furniture store in the 9600 block of 66th Street in Pinellas Park, Florida. The store was owned by her fiancé's family, and Barbara was scheduled to work that morning. A neighbor saw her arrive at the store around 10 a.m. to start her shift. At the time, she was working alone, which was not unusual for her. Barbara had a habit of calling her mother every day during her lunch break to check in, but on that particular day, the call never came. Her older brother, who lived with her, grew concerned when she didn't return home, so he went to the store at approximately 1:30 p.m. to see if everything was all right. When he arrived, he found the store empty. Barbara was gone, but her personal items were still there. The television set in the store was turned on, her cigarettes were left on a desk, and her purse was also at the store. Despite these signs of normalcy, something was clearly wrong. There were no signs of a struggle at the scene, but her brother noticed a calculator and a pencil lying on the floor. This detail, though small, struck him as strange. After searching the store and finding no trace of Barbara, her brother reported her missing to the authorities at 7 p.m., by which time her disappearance was becoming more alarming. Adding to the mystery was the fact that Barbara's car, a beige four-door 1973 Plymouth Fury, had also vanished. The car was distinctive, with a brown vinyl top, the Florida license plate number JZT 780, and a sticker on the right side of the rear bumper that read, "Single and loving it." The disappearance of both Barbara and her car suggested that she may have been taken against her will, but police had little to go on initially. Several days after Barbara vanished, her car was discovered abandoned in the parking lot of Studio 19, a popular rock club located at the southwest corner of U.S. Highway 19 and State Road 60 in Clearwater, Florida. The car was found with the driver's side window rolled down and the keys still in the ignition. Inside the vehicle, some of Barbara's personal belongings were still there, and it appeared that the gas tank was nearly empty. Investigators noted the condition of the car, but found little evidence to suggest where Barbara might be or what had happened to her. Then, a witness came forward with a potentially critical piece of information. The witness claimed to have seen a man driving Barbara's car at a self-serve car wash on U.S. Highway 19 in Port Richey, Florida, not long after she disappeared. The man was described as Caucasian, with dark blonde hair and a light-colored beard or stubble. He appeared to be in his mid to late 20s and was approximately 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighed around 160 pounds. The witness also noted that one of the man's legs was wrapped in a bandage, which he claimed made it difficult for him to wash the car. Because of his injury, the man offered the witness money to wash the car for him. This odd encounter stood out to the witness, who later provided a detailed description of the man to police, leading to the creation of a composite sketch. The description given by the witness bore a resemblance to a man named Mark Cutler, who became a person of interest in the case. Cutler reportedly bragged to people that he knew what had happened to Barbara Barkley, raising suspicions about his potential involvement. However, when police questioned him, Cutler denied having any knowledge of her disappearance. The witness who had seen the man at the car wash was unable to pick Cutler out of a police lineup, and without more concrete evidence linking him to the crime, the case against him stalled. Cutler continued to deny any involvement in Barbara's disappearance until his death in 2011, leaving unanswered questions about whether he played a role in her fate. Another possible suspect in the case was James D. Winkles, a convicted serial killer who was active in Florida during the time of Barbara's disappearance. Winkles had a long history of violent crimes, and investigators could not rule out the possibility that he was responsible for Barbara's presumed murder. However, Winkles never confessed to any involvement in her case before his death on Florida's death row in 2010. With both Cutler and Winkles deceased, the chances of solving the case became even slimmer. Barbara was known to be extremely close to her mother, and her disappearance has left her family devastated for decades. Her mother, hoping for a miracle, has kept the same phone number since 1981 in case Barbara ever tries to reach out or get in touch with her. However, as the years have passed with no new leads or breakthroughs, she is presumed to be deceased, though her body has never been found, and her case remains unsolved. Carol Arcury was last seen in Boca Raton, Florida at approximately 7 p.m. on November 22, 1980. She has never been heard from again. Carol left behind her clothes, jewelry, keys, checkbook, and $750 in cash at her home, as well as her car, which was parked in the driveway. Her family stated that it would be uncharacteristic of her to abandon her children, and at the time of her disappearance, one of her children was at college, another had married and moved out of the family home, while the two youngest were still living at home. Carol had been separated from her husband of 21 years, Giacomo Jack Arcury, for about a year and a half. They were in the process of getting a divorce, and Jack was living with a girlfriend, but Carol still worked for him at Ambi Auto Parts in Delray Beach, Florida, a business co-owned by Jack and Carol's brother. Friends and her daughter later stated that Carol had told them that Jack had bound her hands, threatened her with a gun, and attempted to strangle her several days before her disappearance. Her daughter had noticed red marks around Carol's neck and wrists at the time. Carol had visited a doctor on November 17th, presenting symptoms of yellowing of the eyes, bleeding from the nose, headaches, and a cough, and was diagnosed with an iron deficiency, but these symptoms could also be consistent with the effects of attempted strangulation. Jack denied the allegations, claiming he had never attacked his wife and had nothing to do with her disappearance. He stated that he had seen Carol on the day she went missing and that she had gone out with another man who had previously worked at the auto parts store. Jack refused to cooperate with the investigation and hired an attorney who instructed investigators not to approach him. In 1982, Jack was charged with running an auto theft ring out of the store, though Carol's brother was not implicated in the thefts. After posting bail, Jack disappeared, and he was later found in Tucson, Arizona, where he had died by suicide. Although Carol's daughters had accused Jack of murdering their mother, and her disappearance was being investigated as a homicide, Jack was never charged in connection with her disappearance. Foul play is suspected in Carol Arcury's case, which remains unsolved.
Jim Johnson was a devoted father of 6, a hard-working businessman, and a pillar of his community, owning multiple development properties, a trucking company, and working on establishing an investment firm. His promising life took a tragic turn on December 6, 2013, when he vanished under suspicious circumstances. That morning, Jim had visited Gooley's barbershop, a regular stop for him, where the owner noticed nothing unusual and later stated that there were no signs of trouble at the shop. However, shortly after leaving, Jim disappeared without a trace, sparking rumors that he had been abducted in broad daylight and forced into the trunk of a car. 2 days later, his white 2012 Cadillac CTS was found abandoned near an apartment complex close to where his girlfriend lived. On the day of his disappearance, Jim's property became the site of chaos. His roommate was attacked and shot in the leg, and his girlfriend was caught trying to break into one of his properties, claiming she had forgotten a garage code. Law enforcement also discovered that Jim's condo was heavily fortified, adding a layer of mystery to the case. Then, 4 days after his disappearance, Jim's body was found in a wooded area of Daytona Beach, stripped to his underwear. His injuries were not immediately fatal, leaving investigators puzzled about his exact cause of death. To complicate matters further, residents of Jim's property were charged with cocaine possession and distribution, casting a shadow over his personal life. Despite involving multiple jurisdictions across 3 counties, Orange, Lake, and Volusia, the investigation into Jim's death has stalled. With no arrests made and questions lingering, his family continues to seek justice. If you have any information about the murder of Jim Johnson, Jr., please contact Jimmy Flint, Cold Case Detective for Volusia County at 451-6807. Craig Allen was last seen on August 14, 1993, at Everglades National Park in Florida. At the time of his disappearance, he was a resident of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The day after his last confirmed sighting, Allen reportedly made a phone call from Kendall, Florida, but he has never been heard from again. His case remains unsolved, leaving family and friends with more questions than answers. Allen was an accomplished individual and a graduate of the University of Maryland at College Park. After completing his education, he moved to South Florida in 1988, where he began working as a computer analyst in Boca Raton. His career was stable, and he was described as financially secure. Unlike many cases involving disappearances, Allen was not known to abuse alcohol or drugs, nor was he heavily involved in dating or socializing. His closest confidants were two former college roommates, and his social circle was otherwise limited. In 1993, Allen experienced a profound transformation that would alter the course of his life. He converted from Judaism to fundamentalist Christianity, a decision that coincided with a series of dramatic lifestyle changes. He quit his job, began dedicating himself to the study of the Bible and other religious texts, and delved into the writings of Nostradamus, the 16th century French astrologer. His newfound beliefs appeared to consume him, and by February of that year, he had placed all his belongings into storage, giving up his stable life to become homeless. Initially, Allen sought refuge at local campgrounds and eventually began sleeping on beaches. His erratic behavior escalated during this period, causing concern among those who knew him. At one point, he visited Washington, D.C., to reconnect with one of his former college roommates. During this visit, Allen made an alarming declaration. He believed he was the Antichrist. He cited various passages from the Bible and other texts as evidence for his claim, leaving his friend deeply unsettled. After this troubling visit, Allen returned to South Florida and resumed his transit lifestyle, occasionally calling his parents and grandparents to reassure them of his safety. The weeks leading up to Allen's disappearance were marked by a series of ominous events. On August 10th, he sold his car to a dealership for $4,600, liquidating one of his last significant possessions. 2 days later, during a phone call with his mother, he made cryptic and foreboding statements, telling her, "You're not going to like what I'm going to do," and "You're not going to hear from me again." These were his last known words to his family. On August 14th, he vanished without a trace. His credit card activity ceased, and he canceled his message service, further complicating efforts to trace his whereabouts. After his disappearance, Allen's loved ones struggled to piece together the mystery of his fate. They were unable to locate his stored belongings, as the storage facility was unknown. Theories about what happened to Allen range from his potential involvement with a cult to the possibility that he took his own life. His family and friends have been left to grapple with the uncertainty surrounding his disappearance and the troubling circumstances that led up to it. Despite extensive efforts to find answers, Allen's case remains unsolved. Porter Albert was last seen on the evening of January 15, 2020, in the parking lot of a Big Lot store located in the 13900 block of North Cleveland Avenue in North Fort Myers, Florida. Surveillance footage from the store shows Albert shopping inside prior to his disappearance, and this image has been circulated as part of the investigation. Since that evening, Albert has not been heard from again. Albert lived alone, and when authorities checked his residence, they found his home unlocked but with no signs of forced entry. His second vehicle was parked in the driveway, and all of his personal belongings, including his cellular phone, were inside the house. Investigators noted that there had been no activity on his retirement account, bank accounts, or credit card since the time he was last seen. Albert's disappearance was first reported by a local friend on January 19, 2020. The friend, who had been in daily contact with Albert, became concerned after not hearing from him for 4 consecutive days. This was highly uncharacteristic of Albert, prompting the friend to alert law enforcement and contact Albert's out-of-state relatives. On January 21st, those relatives filed an official missing persons report. A major development in the case occurred a day before the missing persons report was filed. On January 20th, 2020, Albert's vehicle was located in Cape Coral, Florida. It was being driven by an 18-year-old woman named Tiffany Zora Rachel Contestable. When stopped by police, Contestable claimed the car belonged to Albert and mentioned that he had been missing for several days. She explained that she had driven the car to Cape Coral in an effort to locate him. However, she admitted she did not have a valid driver's license and was subsequently arrested for unlicensed driving. Albert's car was impounded and examined, but nothing suspicious was found inside. Authorities identified Contestable as a person of interest in the case. Albert had known her and her mother, as they had previously been homeless and living in the woods. Albert had extended a helping hand, securing them housing in a North Fort Myers trailer and assisting with efforts to enroll Contestable in school. Despite her connection to Albert, Contestable's mother is not considered a person of interest in the investigation. Contestable is believed to have later moved to Arkansas. Albert was described as a generous and kind-hearted man with a reputation for helping others, including individuals in need or those recovering from addiction. He was known to frequent beaches in the Sarasota and Venice areas. Albert had 2 adult children from a previous marriage, and his disappearance has left his family and friends searching for answers. Given the circumstances surrounding his disappearance, including the discovery of his car in another location and the lack of contact with his loved ones, Albert's case is considered suspicious. Despite extensive investigation, his whereabouts remain unknown, and his case remains unsolved. Sabrina Paige Asberg, a 4-month-old baby girl, vanished from her family's home in Valrico, Florida, under suspicious circumstances between midnight and 6:42 a.m. on November 24, 1997. Her mother, Marlene Asberg, reported that she checked on Sabrina at approximately midnight and found her sleeping peacefully in her crib. However, when she returned to Sabrina's room at 6:42 a.m., the baby was gone. Along with Sabrina, a handmade blue and yellow blanket featuring animal images and yellow piping had also disappeared. This blanket was a significant piece of evidence, as it was last seen in the crib with Sabrina. The Eisenbergs reported that both the garage door and one of the doors to their house were unlocked on the morning of the disappearance. Investigators found some unusual evidence inside the home: a single blonde hair, a shoe print near the crib, and 7 unidentified fingerprints. Despite these clues, there were no clear signs of forced entry, and the family dog had not barked during the night, which puzzled investigators. Neighbors reported hearing a baby crying in the early morning hours. One neighbor stated that his dog began barking around 1 a.m., and when he went outside to investigate, he thought he heard a baby crying in the distance. This was significant because none of the nearby homes had infants at the time, but it remains unclear if these cries were from Sabrina. Additionally, the area had experienced recent attempted break-ins, particularly in homes with small children, leading some to speculate that Sabrina might have been targeted by an intruder. Sabrina's parents, Marlene and Steve Asberg, claimed their daughter strongly resembled their older child, Monica, at the time of her disappearance. They provided a photograph of Monica at age 4, believing Sabrina might look similar if she were still alive. While Sabrina's hair was brown at the time she went missing, the family noted it might have lightened to blonde as she grew older. Authorities quickly turned their attention to Marlene and Steve, questioning their account of events. Skeptics raised doubts about the likelihood of an intruder abducting a child without waking anyone in the home. These suspicions were compounded when authorities obtained permission to place surveillance devices in the Asberg home 3 weeks after Sabrina's disappearance. According to police transcripts, Marlene and Steve were overheard discussing their daughter's death. However, the reliability of these transcripts was later called into question. In September 1999, nearly 2 years after Sabrina disappeared, the Eisenbergs were indicted on charges of conspiracy and making false statements. But in February 2001, A judge determined that investigators had lied to obtain the wiretap permissions and ruled the recordings inadmissible. Furthermore, the judge found no evidence on the tapes to support the allegations made in the transcripts. As a result, the charges against the Asbergs were dropped, and the lead prosecutor in the case was demoted. Following their legal exoneration, the Asbergs filed motions seeking compensation for their legal expenses. Initially, they were awarded $2.70 to $2.90 million in damages, but this amount was later reduced to $1.30 to $1.50 million. They also filed lawsuits against the prosecutors in the sheriff's office, accusing them of fabricating evidence and violating their civil rights. While the lawsuit against the prosecutors was dismissed due to legal immunities, the Asbergs dropped their case against the sheriff's office in 2006, stating it was impeding the ongoing investigation into Sabrina's disappearance. In 2003, a potential lead emerged when it was suggested that Sabrina might be Paloma Unknown, a young girl abandoned near the Mexican border in May 1998. Paloma had been taken into Texas by a teenage girl who claimed to be her mother and was later placed in an off-the-books adoption. Sabrina's parents agreed that Paloma bore a striking resemblance to their daughter, but DNA testing ultimately ruled out any connection between the two. Steve and Marlene have cooperated with investigators over the years, taking polygraph tests and undergoing extensive questioning. While they remain persons of interest, no evidence has definitively linked them to their daughter's disappearance. They maintain their innocence and believe Sabrina was abducted and is living with another family somewhere in the United States. Sabrina's case remains unsolved, and many investigators believe she was the victim of foul play. Despite numerous theories, no conclusive evidence has surfaced, and her disappearance continues to be one of Florida's most haunting mysteries. The Asbergs have never stopped hoping that their daughter is alive, and their search for answers persists. Anyone with information is urged to contact the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office at 813-247-8200. Tavia Bailey was last seen in Pensacola, Florida, on December 31st, 1985. She lived with her mother on Sunbury Drive near Crescent Lake. That evening, she left home to attend a New Year's Eve party, but never returned. According to reports, Tavia and a group of teenagers visited a local Chuck E. Cheese restaurant as part of their New Year's Eve celebrations. Tavia and one of her friends were supposed to be picked up later by the friend's mother. However, the two girls became separated, and Tavia's friend never saw her again. When the friend's mother arrived to collect them, she found her daughter searching for Tavia. Tavia's mother later shared that her daughter had struggled with significant emotional and behavioral challenges. These stemmed from the trauma of being abused by her stepfather when she was 8 years old. Tavia underwent psychotherapy and spent time in group homes to cope with the psychological scars of her past. However, by the time she was 12, she had begun engaging in promiscuous behavior and using drugs. Tavia had a history of running away, but had always maintained contact with her mother during these episodes. On one occasion, she traveled as far as New York City. However, after her disappearance in December 1985, she never reached out to her family again. At the time, Tavia was known to associate with older black men and was believed to be in the company of one when she vanished. Authorities suspect foul play in Tavia's case and believe she may have been taken against her will. Some agencies list her official date of disappearance as January 23, 1986, adding a layer of confusion to the timeline of events. Despite the passage of time, her disappearance remains unresolved. Patrice Austin was last seen in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on June 23, 1998. On that day, she got into a green Mazda 626 alongside Lucius Boyd, who allowed her to take the driver's seat while he sat in the passenger seat. The vehicle was not Boyd's, but belonged to his girlfriend. The two reportedly planned to travel to Winter Haven, Florida, about 200 miles away. Austin told others she intended to return the same day, as she didn't pack any clothes or personal belongings for the trip. However, while Boyd returned several days later, Austin did not, and she has not been seen or heard from since. Boyd claimed that during their trip, Austin met two other men and decided to leave with them, but no further details have ever been substantiated. Lucius Boyd, whose photograph is often associated with this case, was a known crack cocaine addict with a history of violent behavior during the 1990s. His criminal record was extensive, including an acquittal in the 1993 death of a male acquaintance, where he successfully argued self-defense, as well as being charged and later acquitted of rape on 2 separate occasions. Boyd's violent tendencies came under sharper scrutiny after Austin's disappearance. Following her case, he was convicted of the 1998 murder of Dania DaCosta, a young woman whose body was found brutally assaulted and discarded. For DaCosta's murder, Boyd was sentenced to death and remains incarcerated on Florida's death row. Authorities have since linked Boyd to as many as 10 unsolved disappearances and murders, including the 1999 disappearance of Danielle Zackett. Despite these suspicions, he has not been formally charged in any additional cases, leaving questions about the full extent of his crimes unanswered. Patrice Austin and Boyd knew each other socially and interacted occasionally, but their relationship was not romantic. In 1998, Austin lived with her sister and helped care for her sister's children. She was described as an outgoing young woman who had dropped out of high school, but remained a cherished and vibrant part of her family's life. Her sudden disappearance deeply unsettled her loved ones, who have struggled with the lack of closure for decades. Despite Boyd's claims and his violent history, no conclusive evidence has emerged to determine what truly happened to Austin. Her case remains unsolved, and authorities strongly suspect foul play. Patricia Action was last seen on the night of May 26, 1978, leaving the Ramada Inn Lounge located at US 19 North and State Route 60 in Clearwater, Florida. Around 11:30 p.m., Patricia had recently moved back in with her parents after filing for divorce and dropping out of Stetson University due to an illness. Despite the challenges in her life, she was trying to regain stability, starting with a new job at the Kapok Inn. That evening, she had received her paycheck and decided to celebrate with friends at the Ramada Inn Lounge after work. While there, she had half a drink, and after about 30 minutes, she told her friends she was going to the restroom and would be back shortly, taking her purse with her. However, Patricia never returned, and no one at the lounge noticed anything unusual at the time. She never came back to her friends, never returned home, and has not been heard from since. Her parents, who described Patricia as independent but always communicative about her plans, reported her missing the next day. 4 days after her disappearance, Patricia's white Tudor 1969 Chevrolet Malibu was found abandoned along US 19 in Tarpon Springs, Florida, her hometown where she had graduated from Tarpon Springs High School. The discovery of the car only deepened the mystery surrounding her case. Inside the vehicle, investigators found Patricia's shoes but no sign of her purse. The most disturbing find was a significant amount of type O blood splattered on the front seat, floorboard, and keys, enough blood to suggest a severe, possibly fatal injury. Authorities were unable to confirm whether the blood was Patricia's, but it matched her blood type. Despite extensive investigations, there was no trace of Patricia at the scene, and her whereabouts remain unknown. Patricia Action's disappearance is considered suspicious, and foul play is strongly suspected. In October 2001, Jarus Adside was under the care of a babysitter, Gwendolyn Brown, while his parents were both incarcerated. On the morning of October 18, 2001, Brown reported that 3 unidentified armed men entered her home near Southwest 296th Street and 158th Avenue in Miami, Florida, during an alleged robbery and abducted the 1-year-old boy. According to Brown, the incident began as she was walking her teenage daughter to the bus stop. Upon returning home, she was confronted by the intruders, who proceeded to bind her and her live-in boyfriend, Jeffrey Cochran, with duct tape while demanding money. During the ordeal, Brown and Cochran later claimed to have heard a single gunshot. When they managed to free themselves approximately 2 hours later, they discovered that their home had been ransacked. Several items were missing, and Jarus was gone. He has not been seen since. Composite sketches of the three suspects, considered armed and dangerous, were released to the public, but no arrests have been made. The investigation uncovered disturbing evidence in the home, including a blood-stained mattress, blood-soaked sheets, and other bloodstains throughout the house. DNA testing confirmed that the blood belonged to Jarus, leading authorities to fear he may have been severely injured or killed during the alleged abduction. Brown and Cochran's version of events has been met with skepticism from investigators. Their claim that it took 2 hours to free themselves before contacting police raised questions, as did the discovery of several grams of cocaine in the home. Both Brown and Cochran were subsequently arrested on drug charges, and Cochran's extensive criminal history further complicated the case. Despite these doubts, Jarus's mother stated she believes Brown and Cochran's account, holding on to hope that her son is still alive and being cared for by someone. However, there has been no evidence to support this theory. Jarus has never been located, and the identities of the alleged abductors remain unknown. Lily Aramburu was last seen in Miami, Florida on June 2, 2007. Her boyfriend, Kristen Pacheco, stated that she left their apartment in the 7600 block of Southwest 82nd Street at approximately 2 a.m., following an argument. According to Pacheco, Aramburu walked out wearing only her nightgown, without any shoes, and carrying 2 bungee cords. She left behind her purse and cellular phone. Despite Pacheco's claim that he searched the neighborhood for hours looking for her, he waited 24 hours before reporting her missing to the police. At the time of her disappearance, Aramburu did not own a car and relied on public transportation for travel. Aramburu's loved ones expressed that it was entirely uncharacteristic of her to leave without warning, particularly because she had a young son she was devoted to. They found it hard to believe she would willingly abandon him. However, Aramburu was in a precarious situation regarding her parental rights due to her struggles with drug addiction. She had entered a treatment program in an attempt to retain custody of her son, but a recent urine test had come back positive for drugs. This result prompted a stern warning from the family court judge, who made it clear that she would lose her parental rights if she did not complete the program. Aramburu, under oath, denied using drugs, raising speculation that someone may have introduced substances into her system without her knowledge. Aramburu's relationship with Pacheco, though serious enough that they were considering marriage, was described as troubled and volatile. Both struggled with drug abuse, and police were called to their residence on 2 occasions due to arguments between the couple. No arrests were made during these incidents, but the tension was evident. Aramburu had reportedly confided in her mother that she was afraid of Pacheco. Since her disappearance, Pacheco has faced multiple arrests on drug-related charges, further clouding the circumstances surrounding her case. Born in San Francisco, California, Aramburu moved to Miami as a baby. Her parents divorced when she was very young, and she had no contact with her father afterward. As a child, she gained some fame by appearing for several seasons on the popular Spanish-language variety show Sábado Gigante, which reached millions of viewers across the Americas. However, her promising beginnings gave way to challenges in her teenage years. Aramburu began experimenting with drugs in her freshman year of high school and, within a few years, was battling heroin addiction. She dropped out of Hollywood Hills High School at age 16, but later earned her GED. Since her disappearance, there have been reported sightings of Aramburu in the Miami area, but none have been confirmed. Despite the passage of time, her case remains unsolved. Diane Alat was last seen leaving her residence in the 1000 block of Chesapeake Drive in Odessa, Florida at approximately 11 a.m. on April 10, 1998. A witness observed Alat walking north on US 19 near New York Avenue in Hudson, Florida on April 11th, the day after Alat left her home. She has never been heard from again, and she did not have her medication with her when she walked away from her residence. Agat's mother received a phone call from her daughter on April 13th, 3 days after she disappeared. No one was home at the time the call came through, and the answering machine recorded the message. Agat said, "Help, help, let me out," while a noise consistent with someone attempting to grab the phone away from her was overheard. Agat was heard saying, "Hey, gimme that," before the call was terminated. Caller ID stated that the call was placed from a business called Starlight in the Odessa area. Agat's mother dialed the number, but no one answered. The severed tip of Agat's right middle finger, cut off just above the knuckle with the nail painted red, was located on the roadside in the U.S. 19 New York Avenue area on April 15, 1998. Her finger was discovered in the same area where the witness reported seeing Agat on April 11th. A second finger was also reported, but law enforcement was able to recover only one of them. A bag of Agat's neatly folded clothing was discovered inside a convenience store's outdoor freezer in Odessa 2 weeks after she was reported missing. In 2000, just one day after the St. Petersburg Times, a Florida newspaper, ran a story on Agat's disappearance. Another bag was found at a Circle K convenience store in Pasco, Florida. It was discovered by Agat's brother's girlfriend. The clear zip-top plastic bag was labeled Diane in black marker and contained black eyeliner, Taboo perfume, a tube of bright pink lipstick, and a tube of generic toothpaste. Agat's mother says the makeup and perfume were items her daughter would have owned, and she was issued a similar tube of toothpaste when she was released from a mental hospital a few weeks before she disappeared. Investigators have not been able to confirm that the bag or its contents were Agat's possessions, however. Agat's mother stated that her daughter was a stay-at-home mother in the 1970s and early 1980s. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in the late 1980s and only took her medication occasionally. Agat's 3 children were taken from her custody in 1988. She and her husband divorced in 1991. Agat was arrested several times during the following years for minor offenses. Her mother said that Agat had been taken into custody at least 32 times under Florida's Baker Act, which allows a physician, judge, or law enforcement officer to determine if an individual requires an involuntary medical exam. One of the last places Agat was seen at before her disappearance was the Coral Sands Motel, which was managed by Gary Robert Evers and his girlfriend. In 2001, Evers was charged with murder. He allegedly shot and killed a man during an argument. He has no prior criminal record in the state of Florida. Evers is considered a possible suspect in Agat's disappearance, but has not been charged in connection with it. Agat had been treated at a mental health facility several weeks prior to her April 1998 disappearance. Her mother believed that she should not have been released, as Agat required institutionalized care. Her case remains unsolved. Authorities believe that foul play is likely in her disappearance. Some agencies state that Agat's residence was in the 12,000 block of Cobblestone Drive in Hudson, Florida in 1998. Annette Anderson and her sister, Mylette, vanished from Jacksonville, Florida on August 1, 1974. Their mother and older sister left them home alone around 6 p.m. to care for a sick relative. At 7 p.m., their mother called home, and everything seemed normal during the conversation. However, when their aunt called later, no one answered. The girl's father, a commercial fisherman, was delayed by 20 minutes due to a faulty boat motor and arrived home around 7:20 p.m. to find Annette and Mylette missing. Neighbors reported seeing a white car in the driveway between 6 o'clock and 7 p.m., but no suspicious activity was noted, and no one saw the girls leave. Inside the home, nothing appeared disturbed, except their dog was shut in a bedroom, and Milette's baby doll was missing. The front door was closed but unlocked. The sisters were never seen again. Their disappearances coincided with a series of abductions in Jacksonville that year involving young girls aged 6 to 12. Among them were Jean Marie Schoen, Virginia Suzanne Helm, and Rebecca N. Green. Virginia's body was found in a shallow grave a month after her disappearance. She had been shot in the head. Rebecca's remains were discovered 3 years later on Little Fort George Island. Jean's body and the Anderson sisters' remains were never found. Although these abductions occurred across different areas of Jacksonville, investigators doubted a single connection. One potential suspect was Paul John Knowles, a notorious serial killer who claimed to have murdered 35 people. Knowles alleged he abducted and killed 2 girls matching the Anderson sisters' descriptions, burying them near the west end of Commonwealth Avenue. However, authorities found no evidence to confirm his claims and believe he exaggerated his crimes. At the time of their disappearance, Annette and Milette were students at Lewis Sheffield Elementary School. Their cases remain unsolved, and their family continues to seek answers.